Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's begin with the flag salute. Please stand. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, may I have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Villaseñor.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Gurrola.
Here.
Mayor Broggie.
Here.
Councilmember Austin.
Here.
Councilmember Mendez.
Councilmember Mendez is out due to a family issue, so he will not be joining us tonight. We do have a quorum, though. So moving on to item number 4, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda. I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Okay, so that takes us to item number 5. This is our presentations, and we have 2 presentations this evening. We're going to start with the State of the Region presentation, and I will turn it over. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council, staff, and members of the audience. I'm David Marin with the Civic Alliance. We are a community-based nonprofit that focuses on issues across the county. We are nonpartisan. We try to look at issues from the perspective of the economy, social equity, and the environment. The goal is to try and share information. We're not actually policymakers, of course, that's your role, but we are just trying to give everybody good information, and that's what's in tonight's presentation. The State of the Region report is produced every 2 years, and we couldn't go out and share this with the community without the support of some of our larger sponsors, the Ventura County Community Foundation, Ventura County Community College District, Era Energy, AT&T, Channel Islands University, Limoneira, County of Ventura, and the Port of Hueneme. Grateful to all of them. I'm going to just cover some topics from each of the domains, but I want to start with this first one here, which is population and average age. In the upper right corner, you see the median age of Ventura County has risen from back in 2000 at 34.2 to up to 38.7, and I just checked the census reports, and it's now 39 in Ventura County. As you know, we are getting older, seeing less families be formed, seeing less children, and it's going to have long-term consequences, of course, around the county. At the bottom, you see Fillmore. I circled that your percentage of population under 18, though, is very good, 26.3. I think you're the second highest percentage. So bravo to your community for helping families to live here and thrive. Couple of highlights in agriculture. So agriculture is over $2 billion a year in our Ventura County economy. That represents about 4% of the total economy, a little bit more. Strawberries are king. They've been king for quite a while, but it's fascinating to realize we have over $660 million of strawberries and other crops that we actually ship all around the world. You'll see in the report charts about which countries receive a huge amount of our crops. Your elected officials, I'd like to show the statistics as far as political party affiliation. Blue is Democrats, red is Republicans, and green is no party preference. This goes back to 2000, and you can see that over time, Democrats have grown slightly. Republicans have lost ground, but the big gain has been in the no party preference. Just seeing young people and others elect to be no party preference. And part of that for us older folks who remember when there was strong primaries and you had to really be from one of the parties, there was more requirements to be in a party. But now almost anyone can vote in any election, so less on that side. So how does it look by cities? So Fillmore is that second one there. Majority, I should say a plurality technically, of your population is Democratic. A smaller percentage is Republican, but you can see of the cities, only Simi Valley has an actual plurality of Republicans. Nonprofit, I think we sometimes overlook just the power of our nonprofit sector in Ventura County. Over 10,000 jobs in the nonprofit sector, generating over almost $500 million worth of wages in our area. And I would think all of us agree that nonprofits are vital to the tapestry of Ventura County as far as being the safety net in many cases, helping with things like recently the U.S. Census, helping to get more people signed up, which benefits everyone. So great organizations there. In the economy, touch on this first chart here. It's a little hard to read, but on the top, what we're looking at is the number of jobs in service-providing industries. Another page in the report talks about manufacturing, but you can see the number of jobs has declined in some of those industries. Dead center is financial activities. That has gone down. But on the bottom, you see what the average wages are. So the takeaway here is that where average wages are growing, we're actually losing jobs. And where we're seeing more jobs tends to be in the lower paying industries like hospitality. So hospitality is obviously a great entry level job. Somebody graduates high school or college, they can start there, but the average salary is in the $30,000 a year range. What we need to do is attract more of these industries like financial advisors, IT, government has always been growing, and you can see the real statistics there. So a lot to look at and process. The gross county product, so this is very much like the national gross domestic product, but here it is, and I want to point out for everyone that this is in inflation-adjusted numbers. So we're going back to 2002, adjusting for inflation, so everything is relative, and the takeaway here is that Ventura County's economy has been basically flat. We peaked a little bit before the Great Recession in 2007, but for really the last decade, we've been at the same number, inflation adjustment. Now, in the state and in the nation, it's all been rising. So Ventura County has some type of systemic problem here where it's not able to grow as much as we'd like, and that means when we do hit a recession, we may get harder hit than other areas. I don't have the breakdown by cities. Taxable sales, though, I can share with you, showing state reports as far as how much taxable sales in each city. You could see that Fillmore has basically come through the pandemic pretty even. It's got an average of about $19,000 per capita. So obviously Oxnard is going to have the largest because they have the most amount of residents. Thousand Oaks is big. They've got a huge Oaks Mall. They've got the Auto Mall. But when you look at those numbers by city, you're closer to the middle. I mean, Port Hueneme is much lower, so is Santa Paula. But so that's great statistic to keep your eye on. And our next report will be in 2025. And so instead of ending with Fillmore, hopefully I'll come back and be first and give you the first showing. Education, this is going to relate to what I showed in the very first slide about how Ventura County is getting older. I talked about that average age increasing, and here is where we see it manifested in the decline in enrollment. Blue is for K through 8, and the green line there for the audience is for the high school. The purple line is where we start projecting for the future, but you can see just K through 8, we had 97,000 kids back in 2014. That's down almost 20%, 82,000. I think we all know that part of it is it's so expensive to live here. It's hard to buy a house. So young people are putting off having children for a longer amount of time, or perhaps instead of 3 kids, just 2, or instead of 2, it's just 1. So it is a factor in schools. But the good news for Fillmore, you are one of the only school districts where you've actually seen a growth in students. Purple up there is 2019, the blue line is 2022-23, and you can see you actually had an increase. To give you an idea what it looks like in other school districts, the bottom there is Ventura Unified, much larger district, but look at that drop from 16,000 to 14,000. Now, I often get asked, well, David, isn't this really just because of homeschooling, for example? But that's not enough students to make this kind of change as far as why we see the decrease. It's just less kids coming in. So Ventura Unified and other school districts, they have to start thinking about closing classrooms, letting staff go. There's a whole ripple effect that can start to happen. So fortunately for Fillmore, that's not the situation right now. And this chart, I'll just go quickly, this just shows you the amount of spending or the dollars that comes from the state for all the school districts. Fillmore does very well across the county because of its demographics. But a lot of that blue line up there, we're all seeing that big jump in blue, that is pandemic money, and it's not going to last. But even still, the trend for Fillmore has been good over the years. I love to share this chart because this shows the value of education. So green up there is females, blue is male, and what we're showing is that for the longer you stay in school, the greater your lifetime earnings. So this is showing your annual earnings. I'll just pick the high school. For a male, they have an average earnings right now of about $37,000. If they go on and get their bachelor's degree, it's even double that, $80,000. So whether your children or grandchildren, niece, nephew, if they're motivated to stay in school, I urge you to find a way to help them stay in school. Because think of that difference. That's just 1 year. Over the course of somebody's 30 or 40-year career, that is a huge amount of income by having that greater education. And it's true for women as well. Unfortunately, we have an equity issue where women are not compensated or earning quite as much as men, but it's the longer you stay, the better on average. It pays for itself. Land use. So you're all familiar with development. This is just showing housing permits in the county. We sort of were really rocking and rolling back in the early 2000s. Then we hit the Great Recession. We've been climbing back since then, but we really plateaued, and I think almost anybody would agree that that number is still too low to take care of our growth that we want. Fillmore has got about 38, let's call it 40% of your population here rents versus 62% that own. So that's a nice percentage of people that own. We know that typically more homeowners means communities are, their neighborhoods are kept up, they care about their environment, their vicinity, and they make connections with other people on the streets and all that. Renters, a little more transient. However, renters are very important for our young people to be able to find a place to live so that when they get that job, they can find a place. I'll just skip along here. So obviously, housing prices have skyrocketed. We have stats on each individual city, inflation-adjusted income. This chart is important as far as showing the average apartment rent. So Fillmore, there is $1,700 basically for the average of all unit sizes in Ventura County. On the top, though, the blue shows the average rent for a two-bedroom apartment countywide. It's now at about $2,700. It's just exorbitant, and part of the reason is that green line, which is the vacancy rate. We only have a vacancy rate of less than 3%. So that means landlords are really in the driver's seat, right? Because they can be very choosy who they want to rent to. They can set very strict guidelines. They can check your social media history because there's not enough apartments, and so supply and demand. Natural resources, great news. We're adding a lot of solar around the county. I'm going to try and wrap up here. Oil and gas, long-term decline about the amount that we're pulling out of the ground. Water use, Fillmore is pretty much in the middle as far as that goes. And I do want to share this chart because it's so important. This is new for the Alliance. This is the birth rate. So if you look about 1990, we had 12,700 births in Ventura County. That was a birth rate of 19.0 per thousand residents. In 2020, that number was down to 8,785, birth rate at 10.5. But in 1990, this county didn't even have, I think, 650,000 residents. Now we're at about 830. So we've just had a huge drop in the number of women who are having children. And this is going to ripple through everything because who is going to take people or take care of them as they get older? Families are going to have trouble having just that whole history of their family being shared among the children and grandchildren. Less demand for services because we have less young people. So to Fillmore's credit, and I do give you a lot of credit to see that your city is sort of this jewel out here that is attracting young people. You're keeping apartment rents down, your housing costs are lower. So, but this is a structural issue. Now, I'm always asked, well, isn't this the same for California and the nation? And it's true the nation and the state have declined, but nothing as steep as Ventura County. Fentanyl deaths, a severe problem. We have more fentanyl deaths per capita than LA County. COVID statistics in here, you had 243 deaths through October of 2023, second highest, third highest, I guess, in the county. And for the audience, this is available online for free. You can download it at civicalliance.org and have all of this data. Public safety, Ventura County is the safest large county in California, the 15 largest. And by city, well, you can see our long-term trend is down. And by city, Fillmore has had nice decline in the violent crime rate. We do show every city. The asterisk are the cities that are protected by the Sheriff's Department, like Fillmore. So good news on that side. And on the property crime side, about even, a little bit of a up and down there for Fillmore, but below some other cities, pretty much in the middle. And homeless population, you've got those statistics, I'm sure, from other things. Fillmore very low. And domestic violence, I did include this because you can see that Fillmore is a little higher than many other cities around the county. And finally, with transportation, we have a lot more people working at home. You can read about that in the report. And less people are actually driving on the freeway even after the pandemic, even though we all think it's so crowded. You can see that we don't have Highway 126, but 101, a decline even after the pandemic. So thank you very much for your time. It's a lot of data, again, for the audience. It's civicalliance.org. You can download it. We do this every 2 years. Very grateful for our sponsors and grateful for having the chance to present this to your community. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Thank you so very
Thank
much
you.
for that. Any questions?
Thank you. Yes, I do, Mayor. Thank you. And it was on the statistic that you made a point about education and showing how the higher you go in education, the higher the earnings. And I was wondering if there was a similar statistic around vocations or skilled labor. Just, you know, if that exists.
We pulled that data from the U.S. Census, and in the back of the report, starting on page 110, we actually list all of the statistics where these come. So if anybody's interested in being a data researcher, you can learn more. But the census, I don't think, puts it out by vocation, those types of things. It would be great to see, because there are certainly a lot of programs that are just certificates, being a certified nursing assistant or a lab tech, that don't require the full 4 years of college, but make good income. And we have a shortage of those jobs, too. So excellent point.
Perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you so very much. It was great seeing you again.
Thank you. Yes,
Appreciate it.
nice to see you all. And the League of Women Voters will be having a candidate forum out here in September. My other hat, I don't have a date for everyone, but we will be getting that ready. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we will move on to item number 5B, and that is our gun violence restraining order presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Melissa McMurdo. I'm a Deputy District Attorney with the Ventura County District Attorney's Office. I'm currently assigned to the Domestic Violence Unit, and I work at the Family Justice Center located in the city of Ventura. Part of my role working at the Family Justice Center is educating the community about the incredible value of gun violence restraining orders, and that's what I'm here tonight to talk about, and how it's a critical tool that's not only available to law enforcement, but to civilians as well, or everyday people as well. So I like to start when I talk about gun violence restraining orders about exactly what I mean when I say that. Most of us have heard about domestic violence restraining orders or civil harassment restraining orders, which are typically described as a restraining order or legal document that requires an individual to stay away or have no contact with a protected party, a protected person. A gun violence restraining order is similar, because it does protect, but it doesn't protect a particular person. It protects the community against mass violence or mass shootings as a result of someone who's a danger to themselves or others through firearms. So unlike a domestic violence restraining order that protects a specific person, a gun violence restraining order protects the community. A gun violence restraining order, the legal ramifications when one is sought out and granted by the court, is that the respondent is no longer allowed to own, purchase, possess, receive, or have custody or control of any firearm, ammunition, or firearm parts. That's the immediate impact of a gun violence restraining order. So why do we have this? Well, back in 2014, there was the Isla Vista mass shooting. And in that situation, the perpetrator was making concerning statements prior to the tragedy, that he was making statements that were considered potentially suicidal. His mother got in contact with law enforcement. Law enforcement ultimately went out and contacted him. But at that point, there was no crime that had been committed. There was no legal tool to take his firearms from him. And so at that point, nothing could be done. And as we know, what history has told us happened, he ultimately went out and he did murder 6 people, he wounded 13 people, and he killed himself. And so the legislature, in response to this, decided we need to have a law that makes it so if someone's expressing these type of concerning statements, law enforcement has the ability to take those firearms in a legal manner that complies with the Constitution and complies with the Second Amendment. And so the red flag laws, or the law that established gun violence restraining orders, was created. So in 2016, the first version of this law came out, and it allowed law enforcement the ability that when they respond to a scene and there are facts unfolding that support a gun violence restraining order, law enforcement at that time can apply for the gun violence restraining order, and a judge in that moment can answer the phone call, grant the emergency restraining order, and at that time, law enforcement can serve the respondent with the gun violence restraining order and confiscate those weapons. So that was in 2016. This tool at that time was only available to law enforcement. And just as an example, I know this is small print, but it's a 1-page form, very simple for law enforcement to fill out. And this still exists. This is still the form that's being used. But in 2020, the legislature realized this shouldn't only be available to law enforcement. We should ultimately have this available to individuals, people out in the community who have these same concerns about person being a danger to themselves or others, threatening with a firearm. Civilians should be able to go out and obtain a GVRO as well. And so the legislature ultimately expanded the law under the title of ex parte GVROs, that's what they're called, and it allows for certain types of community members to apply for a gun violence restraining order. This can be police officers, of course, close family members, people who live within the home, roommates, employers or coworkers, school teachers or employees or principals, or those who are in an intimate relationship or a dating relationship. And when you look at this list, what you can see is that this list makes sense. Because when you read the news and you read about murders, you read about mass shootings, pretty much all of these individuals encompass those roles where you're reading about these tragedies taking place. And so the legislature really wants to empower people from the community to say, if I have a concern about someone and I know they have firearms or they have the ability to go out and purchase a firearm, that they can apply for this ex parte gun violence restraining order and have those firearms legally removed from the respondent. This process that civilians and law enforcement can go through is a little bit more labor intensive than the emergency gun violence restraining order I just showed you, but it's 6 forms. They're very basic and they're all available on the court's website. They're all up to date on the Ventura County Superior Court's website. Right now, as we speak, gun violence restraining orders in Ventura County are underutilized. As you can see in this diagram, this is the number of GVROs that have been obtained since the passage of the law. And as of 2023, we're up to 46 gun violence restraining orders being obtained by law enforcement in our county. But as of 2023, in January 8th, I believe, I've started training law enforcement on gun violence restraining orders, because prior to that, in the state of California, only about 56% of law enforcement were trained on GVROs. In our county now, I can say that our district attorney cares deeply about GVROs and educating the community and law enforcement, and we've now gone out and trained every law enforcement agency in our county, including the Ventura County Sheriff, who serves Fillmore. So with this, we hope when the 2024 number comes out, it's going to be significantly higher than what you're seeing here. Right now, and the reason I'm here, is I do want to raise public awareness about gun violence restraining orders, because these aren't only available to law enforcement, but at this time, law enforcement are the only entities seeking out GVROs. We haven't had a civilian GVRO, to my knowledge, at this point. So I want to come here, I want to speak to you, I want to speak to the public to educate them that this is a tool available to them. And even if they don't feel comfortable getting a gun violence restraining order, they know that law enforcement can seek one out if they report it to them. So what I do want to end with here is that public buy-in and public awareness is critical. Once the community is aware of what a GVRO is, the perceived perception and appreciation of the GVRO is very high. It's a bipartisan issue, meaning that this is not a political issue that one side or the other is seeking out GVROs. This is something that most everyone agrees is appropriate. And we really want to take this seriously and educate as many people as humanly possible on the importance of GVROs, because at the end of the day, they do save lives, objectively. So the bottom line is, if you know someone who poses a danger, they're making threatening statements either to harm themselves or others, and they have access to firearms, either already have them or can purchase them, please call law enforcement and also ask about a gun violence restraining order. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Melissa, thank you so very much. Any questions, comments? Go ahead, Christina.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much for your presentation. So a couple of questions. My first question is, I think one of your first slide, or you repeat it too, whether or not that person poses an immediate threat. And so I guess my question is around how that gets interpreted, right? So if someone, let's just take, there hasn't been a community example yet, but let's say there is a community example that comes up, and a teacher overhears something from a parent who is distraught, let's say, and they do this. So where does the law kind of lie around that parent's, saying, well, I just had a rough day. You know what I mean? Like, sort of that's what's question number one. And then second is just about your education outreach. Thank you so much for coming to our city council and doing all the education you're doing. I'm just wondering, as you listed that schools and teachers, it's hard to get to all the roommates and domestic partners, but other public entities, you see that training happening to staff and at schools. Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you. So to start with your second question first, I've been able to go to the mass violence seminar that the Ventura County Office of Education offers. I believe they're a monthly meeting, and I trained on gun violence restraining orders there because we do have a substantial showing of school resource officers at those meetings. But myself and my counterpart who's here in the audience, Racole Kelly, we are happy to go out and train any school entity that would like a GVRO presentation. We are more than happy to go out as needed, and we would love that contact if you have one. To answer your first question about immediacy of threat, so not to get too far into the weeds, but there are two types of gun violence restraining orders available. The emergency restraining order is for an immediate threat that's kind of unfolding in the here and now. Something's been reported. At that moment, law enforcement's arriving, they're taking a report, they're applying for a gun violence restraining order because that conduct has just happened. If someone's coming and reporting something that happened recently, so there's a future threat, a credible future threat, law enforcement applies for an ex parte gun violence restraining order, which is the same kind of gun violence restraining order that's available to civilians or community members. So there are two different types, and the timeline actually does matter, and it depends on the timeline in determining what type of gun violence restraining order is appropriate.
Great. And those decisions, when someone applies for the ex parte one, that goes before a judge, and so there is a decision that's made.
Yes.
Right.
So what ends up happening is if someone feels that there is a threatening individual with firearms, they apply for the ex parte restraining order. It's generally heard that day, but then 21 days later, the respondent or the subject of the gun violence restraining order has the right to come to court, hear the evidence against them, and challenge it.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you for that.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have, at least one question. You had mentioned the emergency GVRO, and then in the presentation, there was a picture, and it showed a temporary GVRO. Is that the essentially emergency one, or because of the ability to challenge the ex parte GVRO, is it considered temporary just because it could be overturned?
Yes, so both types of gun violence restraining orders at their inception last only 21 days because of that due process right of that individual to challenge the legitimacy or even just force the petitioner to prove the evidence that they have against them. And so all of them last the 21 days, and then there's that official permanent hearing, and a gun violence restraining order, if it's granted at that time, can last from 1 to 5 years.
Okay. And then maybe my next question, when you pulled up the data, I think it started in 2016 where there was one GVRO, and then up until I think last year, about 46. You had mentioned that it seemed like there was being underutilized, and maybe I misunderstood what you meant by maybe that was towards the beginning of at its inception, because it seems like it's increased pretty rapidly. But I was just curious about where maybe statistically you're getting that idea that it's underutilized. Like what drives that?
Yes, so statewide, it's considered an underutilized tool, and most likely that's due to training. And so as the law has expanded in the last 4 years, training has become a required component under the law that law enforcement shall be trained in gun violence restraining orders and when they're appropriate for implementation. And so as law enforcement is trained and more officers understand what a GVRO is, they're using them. So it's just a matter of training.
Okay, and so you are talking specifically to the mandatory trainable audience being law enforcement then?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Melissa, thank you so very much. It's such a pleasure to see you. I worked with Melissa for a few years back when I was still working, but it's great to see you again. Great job.
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate your
Thank you.
time, and I thank everyone for your attention during the presentation. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
night.
Okay, so that concludes our presentation. So we're moving on to item number 6, on to public comments. And before we get started on that, I had a couple of questions with regard to the cards I received. Question for you, Brandy Hollis. You indicate you want to talk on Constitution Week, but then you indicate both. I don't know what both means.
Sorry, public comment.
Okay. And then Sarah Garcia, it doesn't tell me here on your card what you want to speak on, if it's something that's on the agenda?
Not on the agenda.
Okay, then we'll start there. Sarah, let's start with you. Yeah, please. And as Sarah's coming up, let me just remind our speakers this evening that you each have 3 minutes. There is a timer that I'm going to try to work correctly this week and not use my phone. And when you get down to the last 30 seconds, you'll see a yellow light will switch from green to yellow. And then the yellow means you've got 30 seconds left to make your comments, okay?
Perfect.
All right.
So I'm coming here today to talk about Two Rivers Park. I coach soccer, and this weekend, well, not just this weekend, the past 3 weekends, it has been basically like there was a flood there. Massive piles. The kids can't even play. I know that AYSO pays for these fields. We rent them. They pay for insurance. We actually had a girl that got hurt this weekend, and it was due to literally stepping in the mud, and she sunk in, and her body continued. So I know this isn't new. I know people have gotten hurt before. So I'm just wondering why nothing has been done. Like, there's little repairs that have been done, like you put sand on it. The watering system tries to be changed. They try to mow the grass, like those types of things, but there's not a solution for it long term. And that's what I'm here today to try to get that idea rolling, because something needs to happen for these kids. Like they were saying, we have more kids in this population. We want them to do sports here. A lot of kids already go out of town for that. So the ones that do stay, I want to serve them with a really good field to make them stay long term. And that's it.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much. Norma Amaro.
I've brought this up before, and to be honest, I'm going to keep bringing it up till something is done. I'm very concerned because downtown Central, we lost the train. We don't have enough events like we used to have. Business is so slow. There's a lot of Fillmore residents that complain and complain. Fillmore has nothing to offer, but they're not the ones that visit us. They don't even come by to see anybody of what we have. We depend on tourists. But a lot of people, thousands, go through the 126. I've said this before. They don't even know we're here. Now, just about 2 weeks ago, one of the businesses closed down. They're done. 4 weeks, another one is shutting down on Central also. And there's another one that's now only open 4 days a week. I go around, talk to all the different merchants. They're saying, we're just not making it. We're just not making it. We're not saying that the council, you guys are responsible for the sales. No, but please help us get foot traffic. I was in Vaughn's today, and I ran into a young girl that works at a thrift store. It's a Goodwill. And she said that the district managers came in and decided to take the employees of Goodwill out to eat. So they asked them, where do you want to go? And the employee said, right here on Central, it's Central Station. When they got there, the district managers were shocked. We didn't even know there was a Central Street in Fillmore. We had no idea there were restaurants out here. So all I'm asking, please, we're begging, we need to get something. I don't want to close my shop down, but as a tourist, you're not going to go into a city where half of the place is closed down. It's not worth it to them. So something has to be done. If there's any way I can help, please let me know. But this is making me very concerned. There's so many businesses that are either closing, have very little hours, and with me, my personal business right now, we're doing well enough to cover our overhead, and that is it. That is it. But we really need help. If the residents in Fillmore choose not to come by, that's fine. That's their choice. But please help us to put signs on the highway to get people to turn in. Because every so often we do get people coming in, and when I ask them, what made you turn? Oh, well, we don't know. There was a lot of traffic, and they just, at the stop sign, they just made a turn. They don't know why. But that's all I'm asking. Please, I want to keep Fillmore open. I want to keep Central Street open, and I want to keep the businesses open. I don't want us to be a ghost town. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norma.
Whoops.
Luann Brock.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm here to speak to you this evening about the Arundo issues relating to Fillmore riverbeds and bridges. For those who may not know, the Arundo is the tall, green, bamboo-like plants growing in our riverbeds, and it is classified as an invasive species that takes up a lot of water and can create major flooding issues due to the dense foliage. With the coming of fall and winter, and hopefully some rain, it is critical that the residents of Fillmore know what the city plans are to have the issue of the Arundo mitigated. We have numerous bridges that provide access in and out of Fillmore. When any of these bridges are damaged in any way, it severely hampers the movement of residents. Currently, the Arundo growing in the Santa Clara and Sespe riverbeds is taller than the A Street 23 bridge and the bridge on the 126 on the far west side of town. Not only is it taller, it is also very dense. It presents a serious issue for flooding, The Pole Creek Basin was dug out and plant debris mowed down this spring, but it too now is full of arundo and covering most of the basin. I imagine that the riverbeds fall under the purview of the county watershed or some other governmental institution, and that any work done in the riverbeds requires county approval and probably administration of the work. However, it is this city's responsibility to make sure that in an emergency, the needs of this community are met. Should any of the 4 major bridges be compromised, it severely affects our town's residents' movement. The A Street 23 Bridge, the 2 bridges heading west over the Sespe River, or the old Telegraph Bridge near Grand Avenue over the Sespe are critical, as we saw this past winter when the old Telegraph Bridge was compromised. That location does not have arundo in the path of the river flow, but it still sustained damage. What would happen if significant rain comes and the arundo hampers the flow of the Santa Clara or Sespe rivers? I would like to hear the city report to this community what the plans are for addressing this issue. I recognize that you may not take action tonight on anything requested during public comment, but you can surely report out what plans may be in place or actions that have already been taken for this critical issue. Thank you. And I have a copy that I'll...
Thank you.
Could we maybe get a quick update on the grant funds we've applied for the arundo removal?
Good evening, council, members of the public, staff. So where we're at right now with the current grant, in late 2022, we started a planning process for the removal of arundo that was above the high water mark of the Santa Clara River. Also included in that grant is anything that's along the Sespe bike path. And that grant also includes a lot of the wildland area to the north above Foothill, Hunter Drive. The grant specifically is awarded through CAL FIRE, and it's passed through our local Ventura County Regional Fire Safe Council. The Fire Safe Council coordinates, well, there's a couple different Fire Safe Councils in the county. The one that coordinates the Santa Clara Valley is, again, the Ventura County Regional Fire Safe Council. We've gone through the planning process where we identified the locations of arundo removal. And then we've also, that process is in place right now. We had the biologists go through and they did a survey of all the birds and flora and fauna. And then we also had archaeologists go through just about a week and a half ago. Right now, as far as the grant goes, we're in the process, we, meaning the Ventura County Regional Fire Safe Council, is in the process of selecting a contractor. Once a contractor is, and I don't know what the time frame is for that. Again, this is all through the Ventura County Regional Fire Safe Council. Once a contractor is selected, then we'll go through a priority. The priority right now is, and again, this is a grant in conjunction with the County of Ventura. The Ventura County Fire Department is who we're working with. So everything that's the priority for us, the City of Fillmore, includes everything, again, above the high water mark around the A Street Bridge. Once you get below that high water mark, then there's a lot more red tape as far as having to disturb the soil and so forth. But right now we're looking at everything above that, which includes the area known as Sunken City. That's county. That area in there is actually in the county. But that is part of, again, the cooperative grant that we've received. So our priority for the city is the area around A Street, and then the bike path that's above the high water mark along Burlington. And then after that, then our priority will be to the north in the foothills. The Sespe Creek bike path is included, but it will be a lower priority for removal of vegetation. So.
Appreciate that update.
Thank you, Chief.
Yep. And Dave, if we could, I think there's another summary. I mean, I've heard the plan before, but if it's not already posted to the website, would it be possible to maybe get posted? Thank you.
Okay, moving on, public speaker Don Moran, please.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here and taking your time to look out for our city. I'm here to talk about AB 1955, which we had a speaker last meeting talk about, getting you guys to pass a resolution for parents to have the right to know. I'm here on behalf of my daughter and her husband and their 3 kids, which are homeschooled, for this very reason. So, and I personally know a bunch of other people that have moved in that are homeschooling. So I listened to that guy's numbers about, well, it isn't homeschool related, and I'm thinking, well, all these people would have their kids in school if they could trust the schools, and this is one of the reasons why people can't trust the schools, because parents have the right to know. So I didn't see it on the agenda, neither did my daughter for tonight, so I thought I would come in, because they're busy with the kids, and ask that this be placed on the agenda so that we can have the right to know. And that's about it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Don. Okay, next speaker would be Marie Alves.
Good evening, Council, public, staff. Thank you for everything that you folks do. I would like to address the Council on the speech that was presented at the last City Council meeting regarding possibly passing an ordinance that addresses the safety of children in our town when it comes to the passage of AB 1955. This bill allows school districts to withhold information from parents if a student indicates that they do not wish the school to notify parents. At what point do we say enough government meddling in our families? I believe information was shared with you about an ordinance moving forward in Huntington Beach, and I'm encouraging our council to consider an ordinance or a resolution. I would like to see this council request this be added to a future agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marie.
Next speaker is Simone Alex.
Good evening, Council. My name is Simone Alex. AB 1955 would prohibit school districts, county offices of education, charter schools, and the state special schools, and a member of the governing board or body of those educational entities from enacting or enforcing any policy, rule, or administrative regulation that requires an employer or a contractor to disclose any information related to a pupil's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression to any other person without the pupil's consent unless otherwise required by law as provided. The bill would prohibit employees or contractors of those educational entities from being required to make such a disclosure unless otherwise required by law as provided. The bill would prohibit employees or contractors of school districts, county offices of education, charter schools, or the state special schools, or members of the governing boards or bodies of those educational entities from retaliating or taking adverse action against an employee on the basis that the employee supported a pupil in the exercise of specified rights, work activities, or providing certain instruction as provided. This is taken directly from the verbiage of the bill. This is more than just a bill that allows teachers to keep secrets from parents about their minor-aged child. This is about the direction that the state of California is headed in. This is about the government coming in between parents and children. Sacramento is absolutely out of control passing bills like this, and even our own state assemblyman, Steve Bennett, voted for this. Our state nor our city should ever come between a parent's relationship with their child. If our state won't protect this sacred relationship, we are asking that the city stand up to this law on our behalf. I am asking that our City Council make a clear declaration, either through an ordinance or a resolution, that our city does not align with this bill, nor does it stand for the government, state or local, ever coming in between the sacred relationship within a family. It's important that local governments stand up to protect families, even when the states will not. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Christina Marotti.
Good evening, council members. My name is Christina Marotti. I'm a Fillmore resident and a mother of 8. Some of my kids are here. Go sit down. Go sit down. Thanks, guys. I'm appalled by Newsom's infringement upon our parental rights with AB 1955. This bill is a gross infringement upon the power that be by allowing schools to hide information from parents. Parents are the primary educators of our children, and those said children we are being denied access to through a government organization, and that is wrong. I asked the city to do a parental rights ordinance as a concerned citizen and many other citizens requested today and at the last meeting. I'd ask this council, at what age is it appropriate for the government to hide information about my child from me? Is it my 14-year-old? Is it my 11-year-old? Is it my 9-year-old? Is it my 6-year-old? Is it my coughing 4-year-old? Is it my 16-year-old who's working down at the pool? Thank you for signing her checks, by the way. Or is my 2-year-old I left at home because 2-year-olds are terrors right now? Or is it my newborn baby that the government has a right to hide information from me? So I'm just asking at what point it should be acceptable. So I ask this council, as many people have before me, to pass an ordinance to protect our children in town and put the power of authority back where it belongs, in the hands of the parents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, last but not least, we have Brandy Hollis. I want to see you follow that act.
I'm a little nervous. I didn't know this was on everybody's agenda tonight. My name is Brandy Hollis, and I can answer Christina's question. It's never acceptable, so we'll just leave that at that. First of all, sorry, yeah, that's a tough act to follow up with. I wanted to come and thank the city personally, as a commissioner on the Cultural Arts and Recreation Commission, for allowing us to have the music nights. There's been such an amazing feedback from our community. They absolutely love it. I don't know if everybody was able to come out this last Friday night, but it was packed. Happy kids, happy families, happy adults. It really was for everybody, and I think it was a much needed community event. People asked, can't we do it longer? Be nice. I know it's going to cool down here soon, but just know that it was loved and appreciated, and it was looked forward to this last Friday. So I just wanted to thank you all for supporting that event, and can't wait to talk to you guys about Constitution Week.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that concludes our public comment session. We will now move on to item number 7, City Council reports, recommendations and comments. And I will take comments from council.
Yeah, I'd like to maybe echo Brandy's sentiment. I didn't go to the music event on Friday because I was headed to the football game. Both were packed, which was kind of cool to see. And I was, as soon as I drove by the music event, and I thought, oh, maybe it'll be a smaller crowd at the game, but no, it was packed. So it's good to see Fillmore residents kind of rallying around each other. And I will say that for economic development, the city's trying. We can't do it alone. It does take the kind of the will of the people, especially the businesses, to be successful and to kind of rally around each other. So that's something that the city's trying to navigate with, unfortunately, the unsuccess or lack of success from the previous Chamber of Commerce and FAB. But we want to see businesses be successful. So the city is definitely doing what it can legally and without promoting individual companies specifically to be able to grow the business environment. But it does take the community. So I can't emphasize that enough. Rally around each other, work with the city, and we're going to pave a good path forward. There's obviously a market for it, as we saw last Friday night. Yeah, I might have a few more comments, but thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'd like to add a discussion for a future agenda to discuss AB 1955. Specifically, we can't do an ordinance, but I'd like the city to take a position and adopt a resolution potentially against AB 1955.
Sure, I'll second that.
I would be in favor of that as well.
Okay.
Yes, Mayor, I do have a few comments. Report out, and I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, and I just want to give a little bit more detail. On July 26th, I attended the Southern California Edison's Community Forum over in Rosemead, and it basically it was Edison coming together to give us an update on how they are moving ahead with their, they call it now, it was Pathway 2045, now it's Countdown 2045, and that's to reach decarbonization goals. And basically they're working on a more streamlined process to be more efficient. They are integrating grid planning because as of course we increase electrification, there's an increase in the in grid use. So that is going hand in hand. There is, as we know here in the city, there is the underground of utilities and infrastructure into the ground. And what they're looking for from cities is assistance with permitting processes. They want to avoid wrong and erroneous interpretations of codes. Of course, they want to avoid exorbitant fees. So they're looking to partner with cities to make sure they can keep moving forward on their path to 2045. I just want to mention a couple other things. They are working with a group called Climate Resolve, and it's about climate resistance for extreme heat. Last year, Edison invested $20 million in this area, and this year they're investing $20 million 2024, $40 million next year in 2025. And this is about greening urban and suburban parks, tree planting, cool surfaces like cool roofs, cool walls, cool pavement, introducing water features there. Did they really see like community parks as being an area for climate resilience? And just a quick update too on Southern California Edison's green rates, still on hold indefinitely. There are no new subscribers allowed into the green rate program. It's been on a holding pattern with the California Public Utilities Commission to get permission, I think, to bid for additional clean power sources. And thus, 2045 is 20 years away. And so just letting you know, there's still a hold on the Southern California Edison green rate program. So I had started that update a couple weeks ago, so I just wanted to give a little bit more information about that. And I just wanted to thank everyone who comes out again for public comment and talks about the issues going on in our areas, in the parks, with the Arundo. And we do have an agenda item. We're going to talk a little bit later about the dog park, and we'll see, where that goes. But in the future, I think these are issues that we're continuing to address and will address in a larger issue. So I just want to put that out there.
Okay, anything else? Okay, that concludes our City Council reports, recommendations, and comments. We'll move on to item number 8, our consent calendar. Can I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the consent calendar is approved. So that takes us on to our regular agenda. And the first item on our regular agenda is the public hearing on the proposed solid waste collection rates as required for Proposition 218. And I will turn it over to presenting.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council and staff. My name is Kimberly Nilsson. I am the president of Solid Waste Solutions. I'm your solid waste consultant. My mom would say that I'm an engineer and I do trash and engineering, so kind of funny. Next slide, please. We're here tonight for a Prop 218 hearing. The City Council established the need for an exclusive franchise, and it's defined in your municipal code, and it is exclusive to E.J. Harrison. In that franchise, it requires a Prop 218 hearing for any kind of a rate increase. Your current agreement is valid from October 2015 through 2025 in September, and the Harrisons are here.
Welcome, Nan and Jim.
As Nan and Jim and Daniel are all here. And they can request a contract extension for 5 years, 6 months before the expiration of the contract. So I would expect that to happen next year. You have one amendment on your existing contract. It was done in 2018, and what it did was, it was the last Prop 218 hearing that was done. So it established the rates for the next 5 years. So this is regarding the rate increase we've got, the first rate increase we've received since that 2018 hearing. So in accordance with Prop 218, we have to have a basis for why we're here and how the rates were calculated. Santa Clara Valley Disposal calculates the rates for providing refuse service for labor, equipment, materials, supplies, everything, tipping fees, processing, all of that is included in the costs that are required by the franchise agreement. The franchise agreement identifies the process for a rate increase, how it is submitted, how it's calculated, and then we as staff review it, make sure they're in compliance with all the calculations, make sure they're in compliance with all the contract requirements, and that we're in compliance with all the state requirements as well for CalRecycle. The solid waste rate increase is two-part. One is the consumer price index increase, and the second is based on operational costs. And operational costs are tipping fees, labor fees, all of those things, processing fees. The biggest increase that we've seen in the last 5 years is in processing fees, because now we have organics. They have to be separated and processed, and there's more recycling processes that have to be done. So the rates that were presented were included in your packet, and the calculations have all been checked. So right now, from beginning in September 1, we're looking at about 11% increase residentially. It's about $3.54 for a 32-gallon trash, and 64-gallon trash, it's $4.02. The reason that it seems a little bit higher is because we had tried to get the rate increase here by July 1, and we couldn't get everything reviewed and processed because of the Prop 218 requirements. So they're recouping a couple of months of the increase. So that's why it's a little higher. But you are on average with all the cities around you, they all came in at like 8 to 9% increases in Camarillo, Ojai, every place like that. So you're in line with all the other area cities. So this is just a chart of the rates going forward in September, and then the rates going forward for the next 5 years, because this is a 5-year Prop 218 hearing, so you don't have to see me next year. But I can come if you want me to. So the process of Prop 218 is we receive and review everything. The package was submitted to Erica's office in April, the end of April, and this past year. We've reviewed the whole packet. We are required to send out a 45-day notice to every property owner. That notice was developed and sent out in English and Spanish, and that was sent out on July 5th. And that notice defines how somebody can protest the rate increase. And it has to be in writing, and it has to be submitted to the city clerk in advance of this meeting or at this meeting in writing. The protest would be received by the city clerk, and she will tell us before you guys take action how many we've received. In order to stop an increase, you need 50% plus 1 to stop the increase. So we're here to request that the City Council receive and file our report, open the protest hearing for Prop 218, take any comments, close the hearing, check the number of protests, and then you can vote on what we should do with the requested rate increase from E.J. Harrison. And both Erica and I are here to answer any questions you have.
Okay, before we take comments or questions from council, let's go to the public on public comments. This is a time and place for the public hearing for the City of Fillmore residential and commercial refuse collection and disposal fees. So I now open the public hearing. Has the Deputy City Clerk received any written protests filed against the residential and commercial collection rate and disposal fee increases?
Yes, Mayor, we have received one letter protesting the increase.
Okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to address council on this matter or hand in any protests or correspondence? If so, please come to the podium. And when you come to the podium, please state your name and address and present your comments. Okay. Seeing no comments from the audience, does any member of the City Council have any comments or questions? Okay. I now close the public hearing, and is anyone ready to make a motion, please?
I'll move to approve resolution number 244027 that will authorize the rate increase to become effective September 1st, 2024.
Have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. This public hearing and the agenda. A quick question before I conclude this. Are we coming back with this a second time, Erica? This is it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
You too. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 9B. This is a biennial review of the city's conflict of interest code and adoption of City Council Resolution number 24-4028, updating the city's conflict of interest code. Turn it over to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and Fillmore residents. As you mentioned, this is the biennial review of the city's conflict of interest code and adoption of the City Council Resolutions 24-4028, and this is updating the city's conflict of interest code. Staff recommends that the City Council review and approve the proposed amendments of the city's conflict of interest code to be memorialized with the adoption of a form of resolution. So last meeting, I went ahead and presented this topic for the biannual review of the conflict of interest code, and we were given the green light to review the code. So the Political Reform Act requires that each public agency adopt a conflict of interest code, and this designates which staff positions and consultants are required to file a statement of economic interest, and this is also known as the Form 700. And it requires to be updated every 2 years. The last update was in October of 2022. So staff went ahead and looked over the code and made some adjustments to it. And the code includes 2 exhibits. Exhibit A provides a list of designated positions, and Exhibit B establishes the list of disclosure categories for the designated positions. It is important to note that the elected city council members, the elected city clerk, and the city treasurer appointed planning commissioners, the city manager, and the city attorney are not on this list, as they fall under other categories of the government code. So the following updates to the city's conflict of interest code are proposed to be incorporated into the code through an amendment to the list of designated positions attached in Exhibit A, which changes reflect the city's current approved job titles and the associated department, as well as suggested disclosure categories and the addition of 5 positions. These 5 positions include a management analyst, a senior management analyst, accountant, a cultural arts and recreation commissioner, and a deputy city engineer, which is contracted. Furthermore, it is important important to note that there have been 3 changes in title arising from the city's recent classification study, which including the following. The Parks and Recreation Coordinator is now the Community Services Specialist. The AAC Coordinator, the Active Adult Coordinator, is now Community Service Specialist. And the Municipal Service Director / Utilities Engineer is now the Public Works Director. Lastly, the Community Development Department has been included in this code as part of the update, with the following positions the following positions are proposed to be removed. Those include the Human Resources Director, the Film Commissioner, as this commission no longer exists and has been dissolved, the Parks and Recreation Commissioner, which is now the Car Commissioner. The Arts Commissioner is now the Car Commissioner, and the Active Adult Commissioner, which again, this has been dissolved. The Engineer, a Planner, and a Senior Planner. The disclosure categories are described on Exhibit B. The 5 new positions mentioned above will comply with the following disclosure categories, and those are the Management Analyst in the Public Works Department, the Senior Management Analyst in the City Manager's Office, Accountant, the Cultural Arts and Recreation Commissioner, and the Deputy City Engineer. This has no fiscal impact associated with the approval and adoption of the attached resolution, and this is a required review and not specific goal of the council. Attached, you will find the resolution and both exhibits as I explained, A and B. I'm here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great. Any questions by council members for staff?
I have one question. Do we know the total number of added categories that people fall under? I know there's a definitive number of positions, but 'cause I know it doesn't cost us necessarily more, but it takes time. I've done my part in filling those out.
The categories are already provided by the FPPC and the government code, and we just review those, and based on what their position entails, then we make the decision on which category disclosure they should be allocated to.
Okay, that makes sense. And yeah, to follow on my comment, I know it doesn't cost us dollars-wise, but it is time-intensive and it goes through your office, so I appreciate all the work you do to make sure everybody gets that done. But that's a great way to hold the city accountable. Appreciate it.
It's just not fun filling them out.
Okay, any other questions for staff? From council for staff? Okay, any discussion before I ask for a motion?
Move to approve resolution number 244208.
Are you making a motion?
Yes, I made a motion. I said I move to approve.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, this agenda item passes. Okay, so now we're moving on to item number 9C. This is approval of a new lease and operating agreement with Boys and Girls Club of Santa Clara Valley. Before we get into this, I want to make a note that on the new agreement, paragraph 7.2 is being removed. It was inadvertently included in this agreement, so we'll go ahead and move forward with the agenda item and have our city manager present. And then, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Yeah, I spoke with Jan before the meeting, and that got in the contract, so I told her we'd bring that up tonight and take out that section which was required improvements, which was part of our discussions. We're asking the staff is recommending City Council approve a new 15-year lease agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of the Santa Clara Valley. They have been renting the Boys and Girls Club since 2000. They, on average, about 120 children per day. They are providing a safe and fun place for children to grow and thrive, to delivering engaging programs focused on self-awareness, education, self-respect, and other really key attributes for the community. They've been in there, made improvement to their computer room a number of years ago as well. Through this year's discussions, we taking away the utility payment is kind of complicated. We went to a base rent. So the first year, the agreement for starting in September would be 2022 or 2024 through 2025. It would be $4,800 a year. And then the following 2 years, it will be $6,000 per year. At the end of the third year, what we decided to do was get together with a representative from the board, the Boys and Girls Club, a council member and staff, and see what the numbers look like and enter into another five-year agreement in terms of payment. Also, at that point in time, we'll take a look at utility usage as the city is going through right now, looking at doing improvements to the windows, which will then hopefully not have as much utility usage out there, and we can talk about overall at that point in time to include utilities potentially within the agreement. Right now, they're not in here, it's just a flat base rate. This is a win-win agreement for both the city and the school district, and also the Boys and Girls Club. We appreciate Jen and what they do, with Pearl being out there as well, helping out the kids, and they do a really good time. We've been out there numerous times with the children out there, and so it's very productive. So again, our fiscal impact is the city will receive rent compensation as described, $4,800 this year. Next 2 years will be $6,000 per year. It does meet a council goal of community engagement and communication.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff?
I do have one question just about the removal that we talked about, which makes sense. That's a large task. Was that just a draft idea that we had and somehow it made it into the document? I'm just trying to figure out how that.
Yeah, there was earlier discussions.
Right. Okay. Right.
Correct.
Because you've been in negotiations with them for a while. Yep.
Okay, any other questions for our city manager? Okay, I will entertain a motion.
Right. I would move that staff the city approve a new 15-year lease agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Santa Clara Valley Boys and Girls Club.
Can you include that exception?
With the exception of the removal of 7.2 from the agreement.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, this agenda item passes. Okay. On to the dog park, item number 9D. Turn this over to city manager as well.
Staff recommends that the city council discuss future improvements to the Fillmore Dog Park and provide feedback and direction. This item is placed on the agenda per city council's request at the last city council meeting. The city just completed doing ADA improvements at the cost of $186,239.68. Park is back opened, and we're here to have you guys have a discussion on what you'd like to do moving forward with the dog park.
Any suggestions? I was going to ask Dave, a couple of years ago, I think you and I and Diane McCall, we met with Bill Camarillo from Agerman, and he was going to start using the parks and the dog park for their organic waste and try to change the soil conditions at the dog park. Whatever happened with that?
Yeah, we were working with Troy, who just left with us. Right. And we're taking not so much for the dog park, but for Tumors Park, the grass area, and see how we can incorporate it going through all their various grant programs. Then also take a look at all the right-of-ways within the city, medians, to take a look at all that. So we'll need to get back on top of that, because there are some issues with the type of salt that's out there coming off the recycling water lines out there at Tumors Park.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's anything we can do about that soil.
So, yeah. Mayor, I had a question. Yeah, so I guess sort of before we kind of maybe delve into the topic of the dog park and what kind of improvements we want to see and how that would come about if we did, I wanted to ask a question if, and this is I guess to Dave too, if we see that we can separate out dog park from the improvements of Two River Park, or do we see either as city manager or as a council, do we see them more intertwined when it comes with the budget and expenses? Because if we do, today's discussion was just dog park. So, but if we see them more intertwined, then that might be a need to table and talk about the larger park. I know 2 weeks ago that we talked about, a question was asked, do you want to just talk about the dog park or the larger park? And I said, just the dog park. But since then, we've heard from people, I've heard from folks, we heard today about issues, continuing issues that we have with the field. So I just wanted to ask that of council and see if we can kind of answer that question before going any further.
Well, I kind of see this an overall project, but regardless, everything still has to be itemized, whatever the improvement is. Are we putting up lights? That's one thing. Are we putting improvements in whatever kind of ground cover for the dog park that would be feasible? So everything's going to be itemized anyway, so I don't see that we necessarily have to separate them as different issues. I think at this point in time, with regard to the dog park, which is what the agenda item is, focus on that for this agenda item right now and not start talking about what's going on at Two Rivers Park. But overall, I think it's the same property, same agenda item.
Okay.
I'm sure that didn't help at all, but.
Well, thank you for sharing. This is our discussion.
What?
Nothing.
Okay.
I don't even know where to go with this because we have a dog park. It's like playing on pavement out there. I think we have to start somewhere.
Well, and I think that's the reason that it's in front of us now, and that's so we can start talking about how do we, okay.
But what are we going to do?
Well, that's $1 million question.
Right.
Literally $1 million question. Yeah. So I guess funding, let's talk about funding.
Anybody have any suggestions?
What are
I
actually researched it and talked with Joy before we left the office.
Okay, let's finish this right here. Hold on.
She had a public comment card.
I called on her.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, maybe we could hear a public comment and then go back to the discussion or something.
Well, Tiffany, can we do that?
Yeah. Because he already made his presentation, I think, right?
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Brandy Hollis.
Sorry, Mayor, just before, if anyone else wants to make a comment, can they still fill out a public comment card for this item if they haven't yet?
Yeah. I'm just going to add dog park to your same.
I'm just going to add public comment cards is not required. If you want to speak on the agenda item, just saying. Brandy Hollis, was in discussions with Troy regarding the dog park and possible resolutions for ground cover, talking with the Clittage family, and Danny Clittage had advised me that Agromin would be a great resource, so I did contact Agromin myself, and the type of mulch needed for a dog park, because grass isn't really feasible with dogs. You have the urine, the digging, the grass isn't going to really work there, so we need an eco-friendly mulch, which Agromin was looking to donate. And then Otto & Sons said if there was a water source available, or we can guarantee the plants and the trees would be watered in a proper manner, that they'd be also willing to donate some of that to the city. No signage needed, nothing like that. So those are two free options to at least get started, and hopefully at least make some of the community feel a little bit better. But once again, those are free solutions for minor improvements, at least something on the ground, a little bit of shade, and it's not going to cost the city anything. That's all.
Thanks, Brandy. Okay, Sarah, I just added dog park to yours, so come on up.
You kind of took it over. I was just going to say, opening it up to the community. Our community is super small, but that also means we're closer. A lot of people want Fillmore to thrive. A lot of people want to help and be involved. So if you put that out there, I mean, even if we put that out there, I'm willing to put that out there. Anyone that wants to donate their time or supplies to better our parks for our families, for our kids, for our dogs, whatever it is, I'm sure people will be willing to help, whatever they can. So she stole it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with regard to throwing it out there to the public, I'm thinking information should be filtered possibly through Parks and Rec, Dave? Would that be, yeah. So if you are inclined to, use your own social media or whatever and solicit, ideas from the community or materials, what have you, we do have a Parks and Rec Commission, correct me on.
Cultural Arts and Recreation Commission.
Gosh, I can't remember.
Renamed.
So CAR, the acronym is CAR, but anyway, that's where the information that you might receive from the community should be submitted to. And they meet, how often, Dave? Do you know when their next meeting is, or Erica?
Every quarter.
Okay.
In September.
So, all right. Any other public speakers on dog park? All right, let's take it back to council then. So, comments.
Just want to catch up too on some discussions that we've had, not in public but behind the scenes, about shade and the idea that although this dog park just became ADA accessible, but it isn't the end. So there is a long-term plan, hopefully, to keep adding and improving upon it. But I guess my question is the next step being the idea of some shade over the area. I want to say, did Roxanne mention that? Is there anything yet that exists right now in the city's plans moving forward that's in writing, or even just something that we want to go to eventually? I wanted to.
No, the last we discussed this, we're going to bring it through the budget cycle and take a look at the budget cycle.
Okay.
And at that point in time, see what amenities we wanted to include at the dog park, whether it was shade structures, doing water type of, putting a water source out there. Those were discussions that earlier we had talked about doing it during the budget presentation time. And that way we're not doing it piecemeal, it's part of the overall the budget framework.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just wanted to comment too that, and again, not to go back to discussing Two Rivers Park as a whole, but that's possibly in the horizon. And so I think when we do talk about this, when we talk about the water at the dog park, we should think about what may happen, what we may be pursuing at Two Rivers in terms of redoing watering, and would it make more sense budget-wise if we're going to have a contractor out there working out there on water issues and getting things to do them together. So that's just something for us to keep in mind. Just wanted
that makes sense.
I do think it gets back to, I think, what Christina's question was earlier about the classification of the park, whether Two Rivers as a whole is the fields, the baseball diamonds, the playground structure, the dog park, the skate park, so that we know whether or not those funds are falling all under one basket. Also the pump bike track, those kinds of things. So that might also be part of maybe any kind of recommendation, is to clarify the classification of those parks, whether it's one as a whole or three or more separate parks.
So at this point, financially, it's not in the budget for us to do the improvements now. So this seems to me that this is something that we should pick up when we start talking about the budget, as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, Dave, right? So, there's really not much we can do at this point until we...
I think, there's not much to be done by the council now, per se, but I do think there's maybe a couple of things that can be looked into specifically, like for staff, to work with the car to figure out a method in which volunteers could potentially make donations or make park improvements through an approved city method.
Yeah, I think probably the best way to do that is to maybe give CAR a heads up, but anybody who's interested in volunteering, attend their next meeting.
Correct. Right.
And
yeah.
And we can, certainly attempt, I think, to get it on the agenda and get the ball rolling so that if CAR is going to be spearheading at least volunteer work for the project, then let them do that.
Yeah, I think before we invite people in to volunteer, I think the CAR Commission should have the opportunity to sit and have some discussions.
Right.
In terms of what items they want to do, because there may be certain things that, from a risk liability standpoint, you may not want to have volunteers doing it, just for their safety. And
No, yeah,
and
right.
that. I think the car commission will have some good ideas, might not only just be for the dog park, might be for other avenues in terms of even painting buildings, doing other things that other parks commissions do or other regions. So I think it'd be a good opportunity for them to come with some ideas, put some guidelines, framework into it, and they can take that, and then we can go out there and advertise it to the community with an overall plan. And so we have volunteers for X, and here do we like you to do. We have volunteers to clean up the Santa Clara River on every Sunday, put together a plan. They can come up with some ideas, and kind of give them something to work on as a commission as well.
Okay.
I do have one potential recommendation as well, to see if staff could research whether it would be smart to look at whether there's maybe one park or all parks where we could implement a change to or an adjustment to our leash law during a certain time frame during the day, whether or not it's something that would make sense from a Parks and Rec standpoint and maintenance, and then also whether or not maintaining those hours would be feasible from an enforcement standpoint. Because there's, I think, a lot of people who, whether or not they know the city code or not, are actually pretty responsible with their pets. And, it's sometimes just to get out there and stretch their pet's legs, and then they walk them home on leash. So I'm not opposed to that concept as we move forward with trying to make the dog park more dog friendly, I guess. But maybe to just research that idea of, can we designate a time frame where maybe there's a loosening of the leash.
Loosening of the leash, meaning where?
In some designated area, either one or more parks in town.
Oh, aside from the dog park.
Aside from the dog park.
Okay.
Yep. Could potentially save a lot of money too, if we think it's feasible.
Yeah, that would be modeling after what the Park Arroyo Verde in Ventura does that. Saturdays until 10, I think it's open up. It's a dog park essentially.
Okay.
So I think that's something we'd have to have staff bring back to us.
Correct. Yeah, research it.
I had just another suggestion or idea I just want to put forward to my fellow council members. And I don't know how this might work in terms of recommendation, but I know every 2 years, as we have council members, we have elections, and we have new council members sat, that there's the key goals and objectives that happen in the beginning of each year. And I don't know if a previous council has ever made a recommendation to the incoming council, if, change or not change, of something that they recommend that council have as one of the key issues to work on. And if such a recommendation can be made, I would love to see, that happen from our council, like to move forward, that working on this issue of the dog park. I know we're only talking about dog park because that's the agenda item, but the overall park in that area, including Two Rivers, I'd love to see that happen. So it's just a recommendation, I guess we could, as a council, maybe recommend to the future council. I'd like to do that.
Well, I've been on council since 2014, on and off, and we've talked about this agenda item every single year.
Seems like it.
Yeah. So I think that is happening.
Okay.
The discussion's
Okay.
going on, but
Yeah, I guess it would be, if you wanted to add like a little bit more teeth to it, I know Dave had mentioned coming up in the next budget cycle, but perhaps the recommendation is to make it a goal, yes, as part of our budget, but also to explore funding. Like a recommendation is to really explore the funding, the full funding for full usage of what we'd like to see in that area. Across those parks that you talked about, Chris, the dog park, the Two Rivers, the pump track. So.
Okay.
I guess to make that more concrete, could you just add that as an item for discussion for the goal setting workshop that presumably would happen for the next council. Just a, hey, it's up for discussion. I believe that was a public meeting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody could show up and recommend
And that
it
wouldn't
as well.
happen until after the first of the year.
Correct.
So.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on that? If there's nothing to approve, nothing to. So let's move on, shall we? Item number 9E. This is City Council discussion on Constitution Week. So we'll turn this over to City Manager again.
Yes, excuse me. Staff recommends that the City Council discuss ideas for Constitution Week, which is September 17th through September 23rd. City Council expressed a desire to potentially work with the Fillmore Unified School District during Constitution Week. This item provides the City Council with the opportunity to have a discussion of the potential desired event and identify funds to budget for that purpose. During Constitution Week, the Fillmore Unified School District and all their schools plan Constitution Day activities. And if any City Council members are interested in visiting classrooms, Supervisor Chrissy Sheffley can arrange visits as well. And I do believe Councilmember Roll had a conversation with the superintendent today as well, and I'll let him talk about their conversation at that time. Thank you.
Yeah, Superintendent Sheffley echoed those comments that Dave just made. I gave her a heads up about this discussion item because I was one that recommended it, that we approach it with the idea that if we're going to do something, we would work with the school district. It was great to hear that the school district has been implementing it for the past few years. Just a focus on the Constitution. One thing that she did say that they didn't necessarily have was maybe like the small pocket-sized constitutions that many of us were handed at our last meeting. My recommendation would be to see if either a couple or all of the council members could participate in some of the school activities during that week. Obviously, we can't force each other to do it, but I think it would be a good show of partnership with the school district. And she had mentioned also that there's potential that some of their trustees from their board would participate as well. So I'd like to at least come to the agreement that we could have Dave work on figuring out their schedule so that we can participate, and then potentially to offer, I found probably the most straightforward source being the U.S. government bookstore. GPO.gov produces pocket constitutions for $2 a piece, and that would potentially be something the city could offer as a resource that could be distributed at the schools. I know some of the other versions of the pocket constitutions are offered for free, but nothing's really free. There's lots of like advertisement, and there's other groups behind them, good or bad. Some people might have personal opinions, but this is direct from the U.S. government bookstore, mandated by Congress, and I think this last edition from the Senate for them to publish. So it's a pretty generic copy, pretty clean copy, I should say. So anyway, I'd like to roughly, just in my brainstorming, I figured we could produce maybe 1,000 copies, maybe $2,000. I think that's a worthy investment in our local community. We would probably just have to figure out at what level we would distribute that. I think probably offering it to middle school and high school age kids would make a lot of sense outside of the youth activities. That's my recommendation. I'll leave it up for discussion.
Okay. Yeah. We don't know what the school has planned. We need to make sure that they hadn't already planned on distributing copies of the Constitution, the ones that we've received from Annette, annually, which we appreciate. That's what you're talking about.
Correct. Yeah, I believe I do have confirmation that they do not have that as a resource. But yeah, we could maybe say like up to a certain amount if the school doesn't already have them provided. Dave knows a little more, it looks like.
Yeah. I was speaking with the superintendent today. They would be open to the idea. And one of the things they want to do is identify a grade level of their class, whether it's the high school government class or a particular grade level, maybe 5th or 8th grade. And then they would also need to have to preview the book before it's sent out.
Right.
So if city council wants to go down the road of having a pocketbook, we get an order of it, try to work with the superintendent, and then find out what classrooms they would like to have distributed. And then we can order the appropriate number of books for those students in those classes.
Okay. Yeah, so it would be potentially less than what I recommended, but yeah, based on the research I found, I would recommend the one published by the federal government, but maybe we could take other recommendations.
Any other suggestions?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to chime in. I think it is appropriate to go for the classes that are studying either U.S. history or government, and I think I'm not sure. We'll look into it if it's 5th grade where they start studying U.S. history. Okay.
So is your vision then to have council members just go in and pass these out, or is there something else that you think that?
I think that's probably up to determination between Dave and Chrissy Shefferly about how they get distributed. I think the invitation sounded like it was open for council members to just participate in events at the schools that they already have planned. So that would take a little bit. I mean, we're about 3 weeks away, so it would take a little bit of just coordination of getting their schedule, and then basically Dave distributing that to council members to be able to show up.
Okay. I see Brandy has her hand in the air, so we didn't.
She has a public comment.
Comments. Brandy, go ahead and I'll add this agenda item to your.
It was on there originally.
Yeah, she had a public comment there.
Oh,
Public
you
comment
did?
and this agenda, sorry.
That's what you meant by both.
Yeah.
Now I got you.
Yeah, hi, Brandy Hollis again. I just wanted to let council know, I sent you guys all my press release earlier today. It was in last week's newspaper about the new organization I've started through Conejo Health, that we have a line item specifically for civic engagement for the youth ages 12 to 26. Part of that's public speaking. What I wanted to propose to you guys is I do have the budget for $500 to hold a public speaking event that we could use these funds to partner up with the city, hold like a public speaking contest was my first idea, and then award different age groups so we could do on top of the $500 we have available to hold some sort of contest. We could do a scholarship amount for $100 for junior high school ages, $100 for high school age grand prize winner, and then I also have a 18 to 26 age range, a young adult that might be in college or inspired to come out and speak about the Constitution. It also would give an opportunity maybe for City Council to mentor said applicants. I think it's a great idea that we're involved with our youth, also involve the high school or the school district, but also part of our community is not just Fillmore School District. We had so many parents up here talking about homeschooling their kids. We have a huge homeschool community, and I think we need to involve those kids as well in Constitution Week, and as well as kids that go to other cities and other districts to get schooling. They're all part of our community and should all be included in Constitution Week. I think that's really important to have a unified community. So once again, I have scholarships available, 100, and those for each of those age ranges. I will personally match that for elementary because unfortunately my funding doesn't cover that, but I will match the same personally. And then $500 to hold the event. So if that's something you guys would be willing to discuss and put together, I do have the funding for that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brandy.
Thanks. So with regard to, you'll start with your plan. Is there something, I mean, is that something that the rest of council would consider doing, is participating, being at the school
yeah.
and passing out the
Yes.
constitutions?
Yes.
Okay.
And if the council's okay with it, I'm free to offer a sidekick assistant.
Number 10, committee, commission, and board reports. So anybody have anything to report out on the meetings they've attended, or?
Just Economic Development Committee would have met today, but with Albert's family emergency, we're planning to reschedule in a couple weeks, I think. And a lot of the things that I've already kind of talked about tonight are going to be coming up, so we'll look forward to that.
Oh, good. Anyone else? I did have the pleasure, the opportunity to present a proclamation to AYSO on their opening day on this past Saturday. Had a great turnout. It's just, what's amazing to me is that organization, they have over, I want to say 400 kids now, is that right?
I said it was over 700.
700? Okay, 700, yeah. But the number of volunteers that it takes to run a program that size, it astonishes me. And I just, kudos to this community for people stepping up to the plate to make that happen. And it's huge, and these kids love it. So I just wanted to share that it was a really successful event, and we presented the proclamation, and also had Councilmember Cristina Villaseñor was there, as well as Councilmember Albert Mendez, and it was a great turnout. So, and that's all I have. Anyone else? Then we will turn it over to our city manager for his report.
Thank you. Like as mentioned, youth basketball registration has started, and it will go through September 30th. The fee is $100 per player. We're also taking applications for gym managers and referees. Also, this year we're going to do full-time is the Fillmore Legends, the Adaptive Basketball League. So if you're interested in participating, coaching with that group, please call the city. The number is 805-524-3701, extension 713. Other thing, we finally got our contract moving forward for the City Hall elevator. We're waiting for a part to come in. Hopefully, we trying to push them to get it open by mid-November. That's the goal right now that Joe's pushing on. It's another part, another shortage. Everybody keeps claiming shortages, and that COVID's been over 5 years, but we keep getting that issue. In terms of the parks, we are aware of the situation at Two Rivers Park. We are talking with Veolia in terms of overwatering to push it back to a different time frame. Also going to talking with Venco, the company that does all our maintenance out there, to have them not mow on Tuesdays, mow on Fridays and walk the fields. If they see any issues, to notify staff that we can make corrections at that point in time. Sending staff out there to fill in the indentations and fill in with some sand as well. We do know we need to figure out a long-term strategy with the parks. As many of you know, we did apply for a grant to take care of the irrigation system and just replace the grass that was going to be there. That grant was an urban greening grant due to the fiscal issue with the state of California. They canceled that grant. That grant just for the irrigation was $4 million. If you were we're looking at doing turf that would be able to handle both football, soccer, and the salt content of the recycled water out there. You add that in, now you're up to a close to $8 million project. That's just to get the fields up and playing and playable to the standards we think they should be at. That does not include lights. That's another probably close to $3 to $4 million, because everything that is inputted needs to be taken out. For those of you who do not know, that is all fill dirt in there. It is not good dirt that was put in the park from the very beginning and from the very start of it. The subterranean drip system was broken when they went out there and aerated it. So it has been a battle from the very beginning to keep the field up to where it's at. So that's kind of an overall big picture for everything. And I do want to say thank you to the AYSO program and also to the Raiders. We have worked out next year, starting that the AYSO will have all of their practices and games at the Two Rivers Park. And then the following year, the even years, it'll go to the Raiders program. And so that was a big discussion earlier this year. So next year, hopefully have that worked out for that. Shade structures are starting. They've set up the area around Dolores State Park, block it off. I saw them today over at Tourist Park as well, getting ready to our new shade structures for that area. Homeless, we brought out 2 large trash container, roll-off containers. They've been filled up, both of them, with couches, tires, kitchen sinks. It's amazing what's down there in the Arundel area, but those have been removed for us, which has saved us a lot of time and money for that. You heard earlier today, the Arundel is being addressed through the grant project as well. And we have another item that we've talked about. We don't want to talk about it publicly because we don't want people to break it and look for them when they get installed out in the general area for the area. Other thing with the AB 1955, council had talked to us about that earlier. One thing that the city attorney and I are waiting for is for Huntington Beach to actually put on their agenda. I believe it's going to come out most likely on their September 3rd agenda. We're going to take a look at it and see exactly what it says in there, and then we'll do a report, break it down from obviously legalities, what can and cannot do. We'll come back and make a report to City Council at a future date, whether it be the second meeting or in September or the first meeting in October. That's when that will take place. Due to Tiffany will not be here at our next meeting, so then we'll need some time to study what they have. Legally bring it back here, discussion point, have the comments from the public on that item as well. And that's all I have for tonight.
Great. Thank you very much for that. All right, this is an unusual evening where we do not have a closed session, unless I missed something. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which is on Tuesday, September 10th at 6:30 right here in City Hall. Thank you all for attending and for watching from home.